Ramaphosa says his peace efforts in Lesotho enjoy the support of the regional organ on politics and defense. Ramaphosa was responding to calls for SADEC to replace him as facilitator in the run-up to elections in the Mountain Kingdom later this month. The calls follow another shooting between members of the Lesotho army in which a security guard was killed and a bodyguard belonging to Prime Minister Tabane was wounded. The call for Ramaphosa's removal comes from the Lesotho Student Convention and the Basotho National Party. They say he's not addressing security concerns adequately. Meanwhile, Defense Principal Secretary Thato Mahoswa has expressed anger that another life has been lost. Well, joining us to give us the latest details is our reporter on the scene, Ntakwana Ngantana. Ntakwana, a very good afternoon to you. Now, we've been tracking all the progress and feeling rather optimistic that the February elections will come and go without further incident. And now this, Ntakwana, eyewitnesses saw men dressed in army uniforms exchanging gunfire. Please tell us what happened there.
Yes, Alicia, I think perplexed and rather puzzled probably are two words that can describe the reaction of Basotho to this incident late yesterday afternoon, because as you say, people were beginning to feel that the coming election and the campaigning getting well underway and the Electoral Commission saying it is ready, that things perhaps are getting back on track. But the incident has reeled people back into the events of August 30 when we saw the police and the army clashing and gunfire in the city center. But the worst part of this is that it happened right at the gate of the palace of His Majesty King III, and that is adjacent to the Department of Education, and the security guard that was killed in the crossfire was actually from the Department of Education, guarding on a Sunday afternoon in plain clothing.
Look, as we understand it, Ntakwana, Lesotho's Attorney General Tokolo Makete has filed an application with the High Court opposing the appointment of the President of Court of Appeal, Dr. Konalelo Mosito, by King Letsie III. Now, what does this mean to the political landscape around Basotho, particularly in view of electoral pledge facilitated by SADEC mediator Cyril Ramaphosa?
Well, first of all, the reason the Deputy President apparently came to Lesotho about 2 weeks ago was specifically on the call of the Lesotho Congress for Democracy and the Democratic Congress, at least the two parties, saying that they're unhappy that Prime Minister Tabane at the time was intending, or he was making plans to appoint the President of the Court of Appeal, Konalelo Mosito. But he had also promoted a senior officer in the police force to be a deputy commissioner. And they were saying that this goes against the pledge that was signed, specifically a clause that says there will be no appointment, no firing, no promotion, no demotion of senior government officials during this period leading to the election. And they were saying that he was violating specifically that clause of the pledge. But Ramaphosa at the time did not say anything on that visit, but the Government Secretary Mwasudi Mpaka came out to tell us that he was concerned about that. Nonetheless, Prime Minister Tabane went ahead and saw in Konalelo Mosito as the President of the Court of Appeal, and Deputy Prime Minister Mothetjwa Metsing did not attend that event. He came out to say that he was dead against it, that it shouldn't have happened, it should have waited, but specifically that in the event that court cases will arise with the election, nobody will trust that perhaps Mosito, being the head of the Court of Appeal, will handle issues if they have to land up in the Court of Appeal. So this is one of the concerns. And when we spoke to the Deputy Secretary General of the LCD, yesterday, he said to us they are in full agreement with the Attorney General now saying that the appointment should be made null and void on that basis that it violates that electoral pledge.
Ntakwana, let's get deep now. What or who is really causing the divisions now? And for the call to have Cyril Ramaphosa removed, where did this emanate from suddenly?
Well, it's not really sudden, Alicia. We have had these complaints in the past with particularly the Basotho National Party saying that it is unhappy with the extent to which the facilitator is dealing with the security issues. They were saying that he's sweeping them under the carpet, that removing the two heads of the security agencies, the head of the police and the head of the army, was not necessarily dealing with the deep-seated divisions within those two agencies of the security forces in the country. But of course, this has been dealt with in continuing talks, and particularly you mentioned the Principal Secretary of the Department of Defense, Tato Mohasa, who has attended 2 or 3 meetings with Ramaphosa, and he says in those meetings he has specifically asked Ramaphosa to look at the security situation differently. But of course, when we saw this event happening yesterday, he says now it means that what he was saying is in fact justified. But that's the first reason that the people are complaining about the facilitation process. The second reason that they're complaining about is that perhaps he may have had a hand, even though he is no longer a shareholder of Lesotho or Bidvest, which owns Lesotho, or Shanduka, which owns Bidvest or a share.
Let's leave it there, Ntakwana.
Even though he has resigned from those shareholdings, perhaps he may have influenced or made it possible for them to get the work to print the ballot paper for Lesotho, but he has come out and vehemently denied this and said he's not even involved in the processes of issuing tenders for electoral work in Lesotho.
Ntakwana, thank you so much for that. That's our reporter, Ntakwana Ngatana, who is in Maseru in Lesotho, speaking to us about the political tensions within the Mountain Kingdom after a shooting incident which left a security guard dead and the bodyguard of Prime Minister Tabane wounded.